the Airlift Northwest medevac base.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
I'm retired. Yes.
and now I'm retired, so I have time to.
One person here, so we'll call the meeting to order. It's about 3 minutes after 8 and do a quick roll call meeting.
Dr. Esther,
Here.
Lisa Peterson. Hal Geiger,
Present.
Dr. Jones,
Here.
Kelly Deering. Here. Deb Johnston. Here. Sullivan Gross.
Present.
I'm here as well, Anita.
Oh, Max is here. Thank you.
Good to see you, Max.
See you very much.
Max, would you like to approve the agenda? Thank you.
Second.
Deb seconds it. And is there anybody here from the public that would like to speak today? All right, seeing no one for public participation. So we are here today to do our CEO candidate interview. We're just gonna quickly do some introductions. I'm the board president. I'm Kenny Solomon Gross. It's a pleasure to meet you yesterday for a minute, so it was great. I hope you enjoyed your time here. Start with Deb.
Deb Johnston, Board Vice President. Talked.
Last night, Max Mertz, Chair of the Finance Committee.
John Raster, anti doctor.
I'm Hal Geiger.
Shelley Deering.
Lindy Jones, board member, ER.
Chad Brown.
Great, it's a Bartlett Foundation.
Hey guys, so we can just talk a little bit about today real quickly. So we have an hour and a half allotted for this interview, and I just want to be respectful of everybody's time and try to be as close as possible to go over a little bit. I'm okay with it. With that being said, the board members are going to ask you questions, and we have a script that we're working off. But also the board members, they can go off script a little bit and ask you some questions too. Well, I'm hoping that you will answer the questions in a manner that gives us lots of time. Okay, so I don't want to say brevity is the moment, but I do want you to answer the questions so it can give our board members that after we're at have these design questions that we can just have a free-flowing conversation and ask you questions that we really want to ask you. With that being said, too, I want you to feel like you can ask us questions too. So after this time, we're going to let you ask us questions, any of our members and stuff. I think that'll help. Some parts of the questions have multiple parts to them, so it's important, of course, that you use your listening skills and answer the questions fully and make notes and stuff like that. For me, I know sometimes I may have my head down, I'm writing or on my computer, but it doesn't mean that I'm not listening. I usually always say this when we've done this on Zoom. I always kind of say that to people, but even still, when you're in the room, people do tend to have their heads down. I don't want you to think that they're not paying attention. They really are. Especially, I know this group that you've got their attention fully. So I don't want to do that. As you answer a question, the board member might just quickly bounce in with just a follow-up question or just make sure that we get clarity like that. Before we get started, do you have any questions for us? Yeah. You do? Okay, so we're all going to take a deep breath because I think Chad kind of expressed this really nicely for us. We all are just as anxious as you are about this, so I want you to relax and good luck. All right. With that, we're going to start the first question off, and Hal's going to start the first one.
Okay. So the question is briefly discuss your work experience and highlight the positions you've held that you think make you a good fit for Bartlett.
And I think all of you have seen my resume, and so I'll highlight just a few points. I would say probably the most relevant experience that matters here are the 9 years that I've spent in rural Alaska. So even though the organizations have been varying sizes, smaller than this one. And my previous experience is larger than this one. I just want to pull out some relevant details. Delivering a rural has been challenging everywhere. We're always strapped for resources. We're always thinking through logistics of where can this patient get the care that they need. And it does require a lot more strategy than it does if the hospital is within an hour away. The next level of care. So we're always planning for what could go bad in rural Alaska. So I would say also, you know, the last few years have been financially challenging everywhere post-COVID. And I'm also going to say the 5 years leading up to COVID in the lower 48 were also quite tough. So the lower 48 had seen reimbursement challenges far sooner than Alaska. Alaska's been blunted by some of those effects. Our payers are actually doing pretty well in Alaska. So I would say I've spent probably the last, I'd say 14 years working under pressure, you know, financial pressures. And some of that is working for for-profit entities, and some of that is working for, you know, starting up new service lines where you have a short amount of time to get to where you need to get to break even. And others are growth opportunities, which is fantastic. In the hospital setting, we have to work on growth opportunities. We have to work on maximizing revenue where we can, because there are so many service lines that we need that will never break even. And so we can talk about what challenges that causes as well, but we're always balancing what does the community need and what can we afford. So I would say, again, my Michigan experience, also rural, but in a more complex organization with multiple specialties, I think was great experience that prepares me well. And then also my experience here in Alaska. I've done turnarounds, financial challenges, severe financial challenges under a short time span, and come out very successful. So working with what we have to accomplish what we need to accomplish, I would say is my specialty. And then also relative free.
Thank you, Melanie. Yeah,
Bartlett is a small hospital and it pays for the CEO to get things done. From your previous role, please tell us about how you balance the demands of daily operations with community relations and maintaining financial stability.
The three are interwoven into the job, right? You can't take one piece out. I've never worked in an organization with a figurehead as a CEO. I've always been in rural America, and therefore it's always been a working position. Part of that also is I grew up in the ranks. So I've grown up in healthcare. I've worked on most of the departments. I understand a lot of the specialties and how they work together, all the departments and how they work together. So I think that was good, a good foundational understanding of healthcare. So now when I'm tackling challenges, I know where to go to get the answers that I need. And I'm not afraid to go into the weeds to figure things out. I am a working CEO. I do not sit in meetings all day. I tackle the hard things. I bring groups together and we solve things. And so that's the type of work that I love. I would say the day-to-day operations, of course, there are things that need to get done, right? Certain meetings, certain communications need to go out. You know, there's regulatory required meetings that you have to do. But that, you know, that might be half of the day. Community relations takes all sorts of work. That could be rounding with patients. That could be going to a meeting with the community. I have regular stakeholder meetings in my facility with our chief of police and our chief of fire and our emergency manager for the city manager. And then we have other helping agencies that meet on a regular basis. We have the social services. So to sit around the table to plan out what we're going to do collaboratively, I would say is a way that in my normal daily work, we're getting feedback from the community itself. And then also there's just life, right? So showing up to events, going to the fairs, going to the 5Ks, you know, there's going to be, you know, we sign up for the food bank. There's many different volunteer opportunities in the community. And that's a way to, again, get feedback on how things are going. People do share that information. I would also say for community relations, having a diverse board is very helpful. So you're representing a sector, yourself, your family, maybe an organization, and maybe a demographic. So everyone brings to the table a perspective. And getting that perspective on a regular basis is another way of relating with the community, or at least understanding community needs. And then I would also say maintaining financial stability is tied into the other two. If you do your daily operations well, if you serve your customers well, that is our business model, right? So to have customers for our services. And the market has changed a little bit. Healthcare has changed a little bit. Our customers, they've turned into more savvy consumers than maybe they did 20 years ago. Where they're selecting services, they're weighing out options. Oftentimes they're paying out of pocket for at least a portion of the service. And so they're looking at prices, and of course, the federal government is requiring us to participate in price transparency. So they get to have that information to make better decisions for themselves. So our environment has changed, and we need to be competitive for their services.
Thank you. Next.
Thanks, Melanie. Good morning again. So I've got kind of a two-part question. First, your experience to me as chief leader or executive at facilities are considerably smaller facilities. I mean, much smaller. Over 600 employees here. There's a variety of activities. There's multiple operating units. And so, part of your answer I'd like to give is how you see yourself being able to transition from these small facilities to a very large facility. And then when you wrap that inside the fact that we're an enterprise fund and are very married to the city and borough of Juneau and rules that they've established, they carry out significant functions like capital projects. There's a close relationship in HR. There's a lot of oversight that happens downtown. They manage all of our cash, for example. So I'd like you to speak to how you would deal with both the bureaucratic issues that you're going to face that I don't seem to see in your resume vis-a-vis the relationship with CBJ, and then moving to this much larger facility as executive.
That's a great question. So my current structure in Valdez, though a smaller organization, structure isn't that much different than here. We're actually owned by the city of Valdez, and we're in a management agreement with Providence. So there are differences. So our HR, for example, comes through Providence rather than through the city. But the relationship isn't that different. So when we have our budget approval process, we do have an internal process with Providence, but we also have a process with the city. So our budget goes before the city. We're defending that, explaining that as well. And capital is the same thing. So any excess revenue that our hospital earns goes into a holding account with the city. And then that is what funds our capital. So we're not applying through capital funds through Providence in any way. It's all locally funded. Thankfully, our organization has been financially healthy ever since entering into the management agreement with Providence. That's given a lot of support functions on a scale that we would not have been able to have on our own. So that's been very helpful. We've been very profitable, and those funds help to fund all of our capital projects, including we have a capital expansion plan happening as we speak. We're expanding our long-term care unit. We're redesigning our ER. We have a new CT scanner coming in, and we have a phased approach for the next 8 to 10 years of additional projects. And so the city has been the approver for all of those, all of the capital purchases, all of the projects, and we bring those to council for discussion. We do our prioritization with our local board, and then the results come to city council for further discussion and approval. And they've been I will say, very nice to work with. They ask great questions. We give them the answers, and they've been very supportive of all of our initiatives. So that relationship part of bureaucracy, there's a lot of chiefs, and there's a lot of stakeholders. Not a problem. That's just the way we do our work. And it's not that different from the previous organizations that I've been in either. Even if not city owned, you have to collaborate with your city when you're in a small community, which this is still on the large side of small, but still. And I would say, going to a larger facility, we've chosen rural intentionally. We love living rural. My family loves living rural. So that has dictated the size of the facilities that I work in. But really the mechanics of running a healthcare facility is not that different from smaller to larger. I have been in larger institutions as well. And I would say that's where I've learned a lot of my expanse of the specialty knowledge that I have. I have, working knowledge of how a urology practice works. I understand how the general surgery throughput in the office, their surgical cases. So I would say, the experiences over the course of my 27 years in healthcare culminate into kind of a pretty broad base of understanding. And now it's just bigger volumes in those service lines. So slightly larger, a little more complex, but not the most complex I've worked in. That doesn't challenge me at all.
So Providence has a contract with Valdez, right? So who does Providence hire? Do they give Valdez, do they give them the CEO and the CFO, or how does that work?
So Providence manages the facility. So when it's recruiting for the leadership positions, correct, Providence would be the hiring entity in collaboration with city stakeholders and our advisory council.
Okay. So Melanie, half of this interview today, I should say half, but a third of it is in executive, or 2/3 is an executive session. The first third is not. So I'm going to ask you the following question, and then after that, we'll go into executive session. And a lot of these people will leave the room and stuff, and we'll just have the board here. So mine is to you is, I guess yesterday you were given a scenario, and so now you have 15 to 20 minutes to give us a presentation of the information that you provided this year. So looking forward to see that, and go ahead and start now.
I feel the need to frame up this assignment. So this is a scenario which does not represent facts and our current status, though it mirrors very well. But I do want to say that because I did prepare a PowerPoint with ideas, with thoughts about some next steps in these areas. This is not to be used as any kind of a roadmap. This is my high level, very entry level understanding of where things are at currently. So take it for what it's worth. My goal in this, at least the assignment, was to be able to share with you key information in a concise way, stick to a timeline, get you the information that you need. I'll also share that as this is a board that I'm not familiar with, I tweak things over time for my board based on what they want to see. How I start out is how I started out today with a little, it's wordy, right? I broke every PowerPoint rule there is with wordiness. But the goal is that you have a document that you could reference later and that it makes sense still. If I bullet information too much, which I would with my peers, I might bullet information where they understand the topic in a certain way. If I'm doing it to a broader audience, this group is well versed as well, but others in the room may not be. So I hopefully, wrote things in a way that would make sense across whether you're kind of experienced in healthcare or not. So hopefully that's helpful. So I provided you with an operational update for August 2024. It does have some real data in it, but these are some of my ideas. So background on Bartlett, you can feel free to move through, and the strategic goals as well. You will notice that the key priorities that I identified do line up with the strategic plan well. So the current situation, we have financial constraints. We're operating at a financial loss of 8.45 million year to date as of June 31st, and that's not consolidated, that's hospital only. And that's limiting our ability to be able to invest in.
Can you pause a second? It looks like that screen set out. There you go. I don't know what's going on with that one. Let me stop sharing for a second.
No pressure, need a wall, just.
No, it's. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I should be the nervous one here, right? You're the one on stage.
I don't want that screen to go out again. Can you folks see this?
Ian, can you see that?
Yes, Anita, we can see it.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Very good, thank you. Additionally, in the current situation, we have staffing shortages in key areas, particularly for registered nurses and certified nursing assistants. There have been some regulatory changes on the horizon in the recent past and in the future that will increase our operational costs, and the demand for services it continues to grow in 3 key areas. So I've identified key priorities in 4 areas. The number 1 priority is to maintain the quality of care, and that means to address vacancies and creative solutions. What I'd suggest for that, things like temporary hires, short shifts, kind of tailoring a flexible schedule to meet the needs of our workforce, as well as the needs of the organization, particularly hitting high volume times. Remote nursing also as an option, and I say as allowable within the contracts, which I have not yet seen. I would also recommend cross-training staff from lower volume units to higher volume units. And some of that is already happening. That's fantastic. This year I was at a rural conference for the Hospital Association, and that was one of the most successful strategies across all of the rural hospitals for filling vacancies and to reduce travelers, is that people were cross-trained for more than 1 unit. One facility who had removed travelers for, they had already been done for a year and a half at the point of the conference this year, which was phenomenal. At least half of their workforce could cover 2 or 3 areas, which is fantastic. Not only is that good for the organization and good for flexibility, but it's also good for the teams. If there are, low volumes in different areas and census-driven shifts, they would be able to be deployed to other areas and maintain their hours, which is helpful. We also will utilize productivity analytics to guide staffing decisions between clinical leaders. Some of this is already happening on a regular basis with a nursing leader huddle each day where they're exchanging information. Your census looks like X, mine looks like Y. We're going to staff in this way. So those are actively happening as we speak. And then also to maintain the quality of the care, to monitor patient satisfaction. You're probably well versed in HCAHPS scores, so monitoring those for key indicators of how our patients are experiencing our care. And then also increasing leader rounding with patients, and that's a focus on wait times, asking patients, how long have you been waiting? Has anyone checked in with you? Also looking at access to care. How long did it take for you to get this appointment if it's an outpatient service, for example? Or if it's an ER visit, how long did it take to get into your room? Are we caring for you well? Having those conversations with patients can be really helpful. And have we met your needs? That's a quality of care question that can be asked to each of our patients. We want to make sure they feel cared for in the process and that we're aware if there's gaps. Also, resource allocation. We will conduct a thorough review of each program. This high-level analysis has been done over the course of the last several months. It's been reported out. Looks phenomenal, very detailed. This would have a slightly different approach. So now we're not looking for large programs to see, where the large losses are, but we're looking to optimize within each program. So looking for those smaller opportunities to optimize. So financial analysis, where I would always start. Volume trending over the last 3 years. What is the demand for services? Meaning, is there an unmet need? Is there a wait list for services, for example? Also outcome measures for that particular department or program. What are their outcome measures? What are they monitoring in their performance metrics? Normally, they're patient-oriented metrics. Have there been any changes in the market? Is there increased competition? Is there, has a new service been built that directly competes? Is there a change in the demographics in the community with a closure of a business or something like that? And then also staffing for that specific program. Are there vacancies? What are they? Has there been turnover? Is it different than other departments? And then the use of contract labor workers. Also identifying whether or not it's a core service. And then alternate funding mechanisms. Are there other strategies that we should be employing to obtain funding or support for the particular program? Whether that's through a grant fund or another revenue stream through a service we can build for, or is it a collaboration with a community partner? Another key priority, staff morale. It came up a lot in my conversations yesterday. there's a lot of tension in the organization between how do we do this really tough financial thing, and yet how do we take care of our people? And so the tension is real, and you need both in order to be successful. I would recommend engaging the shared governance committees, of which you have some. And normally they're nursing oriented committees, particularly with a focus on training needs. Our nurses want to be prepared for the work that they're doing, and especially if you're having some cross coverage, there may be some gaps in experience or knowledge where there's some training needs that we need to bring in. And then, of course, implementing those training programs. I'd also support the Employee Wellness Committee, which you have, to establish some meaningful interventions. And meaningful can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different units. And so figuring out what those are in a targeted way would be very helpful. We've tried a lot of things with some success in some of those areas, so that's exciting. I would also recommend increasing leader rounding with staff, and that's all leaders, senior leaders, as well as managers. That face time is important, and I heard it a lot yesterday. That rounding with some is good, and rounding with others not so good. There's some opportunities there. And the tension is real for senior leaders as well. I am one, right? So I understand the pressures of a day, but that is one of the important parts of our job as well. And then holding regular town hall updates. I was excited to see the participation yesterday, even for the brief one that we held with me. I think we had 70 people logged in, really nice participation, good questions, good engagement. So that's exciting to see. And I've heard from others that town hall format has been really helpful, that Ian has successfully done that. And they really enjoy that. And it's important to have regular touch points when things are tough and when there's times of uncertainty. Like, how are we doing? Give that feedback. What progress are we making? People want to know. Celebrating wins, we can't do that enough, whatever that looks like. That can be awards, that can be, kudos in the chat of a huddle. It can be special, ceremonies. It can be, and we do have some nice awards in place. It can be potlucks. It can be all sorts of ways that we celebrate, a department having a success, launching a new service, launching a new piece of equipment, having really high volumes at a time. There are many ways to celebrate wins. And I don't know when the last employee engagement survey was conducted. I'm told that it was within the last year, but you would know that. But I think at the very least an annual survey process for some department specific feedback would be helpful. In my organization, we've now moved that to a quarterly basis rather than annual, because annual is just too long. Everyone forgets what the goals even were by the time you get to the next ones. And then you get that survey, you didn't follow up with survey kind of response, because nobody remembers what it even was. So I think the quarterly, it keeps it current, focus on one thing at a time by department and for the organization. It makes the action planning a little easier, a little more clear, and you can get some things done. And then stakeholder communication. This one, you seem to have done a really good job. At least I combed through some of the previous board packets, and you have a really clear pathway for how to communicate information, particularly hard information. So I appreciated that. I detailed mine out and then I read yours. So I didn't tweak mine, but ours match up pretty well. So I left it in there. The programmatic reviews will be conducted with department leaders and medical staff. And I put both in there. Those aren't necessarily the same process. Those can be two different processes. Department leaders, when they're talking about a programmatic review and all of those indicators that I mentioned, they have a narrative, right? They have a story to tell. And then the physicians, they have a different view of the department. So I would recommend doing the departmental deep dive, summarizing those and presenting those to med staff for their review and approval. They have a different lens for looking at that information. And both are essential. Results will be analyzed by the senior leadership team. I did date things. I do like to date. I like to tie myself to dates so that you can know what you can expect. And then providing a prioritized set of recommendations to the board of directors for your discussion. Communication cascade, whatever is decided by the board, that it's communicated with senior leadership to help to work on, internal messaging and then external messaging with med staff, with the management key staff. So I say key staff because certain departments may be affected more than others. And if there's an interdepartmental or if there's a change within a department, it's important that they hear that first rather than hearing it broadly with the rest of the organization. And then moving in all management staff, again, key staff affected, and then all staff, and moving through to the City and Borough of Juneau Assembly, patients and community. And it really does depend on what the level of the change is as to whether or not the change is executed at the lower level, or if it's a communication pathway. Internal changes may not reach the point of city decision-making. That may be done here. So I would need to determine what it is that we would be changing before I'd say which step is appropriate. That's it. Any questions? I kept 15 minutes. My faux scenario.
So, if there's no questions, we're gonna take like just a brief couple minute at ease, so everybody can use the bathroom, fill their coffees. And we'll come back and have executive session.
Into executive session, to discuss matters that the immediate knowledge would defame or prejudice the character or reputation of any person.
Great. Seeing no objections, we're into executive session, so anybody that's on the line that's executive session, we moved into a waiting room. In the room here, we have Chad and Anita. Does the board have any issues with letting Chad and Anita stay?
No.
Okay. So, Melanie, thank you very much. It was a pleasure getting a chance to meet with you today. With that, we are adjourned, and thank you, and have a good day. And a safe one.
Thank you, Melanie. You're really nice, and really enjoyable day yesterday. It was daunting, to say the least. It was 12 solid hours of 120 stakeholders. But it was.
But not as daunting as moving.